Hi everyone, welcome to our beginners mat class. My name's Claire and today I'm taking you through a 45-minute practice and we'll be taking things super slow, just exploring the very basics. Now if you've got a bit of movement background or you frequent the gym or you have taken class before or maybe you've got a background in some sort of movement, you might like to jump over to our general Hatha Flow and Creative Vinyasa channel. But if you haven't practiced for a very long time or you're completely new to the practice, this is exactly where you want to be. And also if you're a beginner who doesn't feel comfortable getting down onto the floor, we've also got our chair yoga classes. So there's a chair yoga class up now, so you can pop over to that instead. But otherwise you're in the right place. And let's get started. So I like to start all of my classes laying on our back in a posture called Supta Baddha Konasana, reclining bound angle pose. And for those of you that don't know and you're wondering about these words in another language, yoga is such an old practice, and when it was being developed, the language that was used at the time and the language that sort of named a lot of the postures was Sanskrit. And it's obviously a language that's not common or not spoken anymore, but it's hung around in the yoga tradition because it's so old. And that there's still Sanskrit scholars and people that study this language at universities, and it's a very complex language. But I think it's nice to, sort of touch base with those roots and remember some of those original names. And you don't have to learn them, but I'll throw a little bit of Sanskrit at you every now and then. So we'll just start with this one. Supta Baddha Konasana, reclining bound angle pose is the translation. So for this one, we start with our feet together, our knees apart, and we just lay our spine over a bolster. Now, if you don't have a bolster at home, you can just use a pile of a few pillows, 2 to 3 pillows, depending on what feels comfortable for you, and that'll work beautifully. So laying over your bolster or your pile of pillows, and just see how that feels. If that feels a little bit too strong, you can get rid of some of the pillows and maybe just lay on one, or you can just lay flat on your back. And there we have it. Another option, if that's feeling a little bit too strong on the inner thighs and groin, you can bring your feet to the outside edge of the mat and rest the knees together. So that's a really nice option to take if that feels better for you. And then once we're there, we'll close our eyes. And we'll just start to allow the body to settle. And the first thing we should know as we move into our yoga practice, everything should feel fairly comfortable, even though we might be getting used to certain stretching sensations, and we might be working our bodies sometimes through the practice. We don't want any uncomfortable sort of sensations to creep into the body. So if anything doesn't feel quite right, just adjust. Maybe come flat onto your back. Or get rid of some of the pillows. And just make sure that you're feeling really comfortable wherever you are, whether the feet are together and the knees are apart, or whether the feet are to the outside edges of the mat and the knees are resting together. And you can bring your hands to your belly or bring the backs of the hands to the floor so the palms are facing the ceiling. And we'll start to leave behind any outside thoughts. Just forget about what you have to do later today, what you have been up to during the week, and we're trying to let the mind settle, and we're drawing our attention inwards. So we're starting to really drop into the present moment and notice what's going on in our body in this moment. And I'll start with a little body scan, starting at the crown of the head, just slowly moving your awareness through the body down towards the toes. And just pause at all the spots where you're feeling a little bit of resistance or tension, and see if you can use the focus of your mind to start smoothing that out. You can visualize the tension melting away, dissipating into the floor. Check in with all the little muscles of the face. Feel the whole face softening. Feel the shoulders peeling back. Feel the whole torso melting back into your mat. Muscles through the hips are softening all the way down to the toes. And see if you can arrive at a place where every tiny little muscle feels still now. And then let's bring our attention to our breath, not controlling it just yet, just noticing how the breath is flowing in and out of the lungs. And we'll just take our mental note that in actual fact, most of the people living in the West are not breathing properly or deeply enough anymore. We're born knowing how to breathe. And when we're born, we naturally breathe so that there's more movement coming into our belly. And that's a sign that our diaphragm is moving dynamically and there's depth in our breath. As we go through our life, and especially if we live very fast-paced lives in the city or in the suburbs, over time the amount of stress that we experience through our day, the result is a more shallow natural breath. And we start to breathe more into our chest. The movement is mostly coming into our chest area. So through the practice of yoga, we're actually trying to retrain our breath to be a lot more deep. And as we coordinate breath with movement, then that gradually starts to settle in as a new pattern. And then when we go out into our everyday lives, our breath starts to become a little bit more naturally deep. So now that you've noticed how your natural breath is flowing in and out of your body, will start to create a little bit more depth. And if we're counting this out in our mind, we will breathe in for 1, 2, 3. Breathe out for 1, 2, 3. Breathe in 1, 2, 3. And out for 1, 2, 3. So depending on your own personal lung capacity, you can make these counts a little bit shorter or a little bit longer, or you can increase the counts up to 4 now. Breathing in for 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathing out for 1, 2, 3, 4. And continue counting it out in your mind. And as you do, see if you can start to notice if you're breathing mostly into your chest or the movement is rippling down into your belly more. And we'll start to exaggerate the rise and the fall of the belly together. So as you inhale, imagine the belly is like a balloon starting to expand. And as you exhale, the belly contracts and the belly button falls back towards the spine. 4 counts, breathing in, belly expands. The balloon. And exhale, everything settles back. And we'll keep going like this, exaggerating the rise and the fall of the belly with the breath. And you can start to make those counts a little bit slower if that feels comfortable for you, or you can speed them up. You want to be starting to find a pace where you feel like you're expanding the lungs a bit, you're getting more depth, you're training your lung capacity to be deeper, but at the same time we don't want to feel strained or stressed in our breath. We want to feel quite comfortable, but deeper than usual. And the whole time we're trying to keep our mind on the breath and that movement in our belly. This is like training for our mind as well. The more we can focus on one detail, one little thing that's going on in our body, the more we're training ourselves to become a lot more present and focused in our day-to-day lives. If you find the mind starting to wander off, that's okay, don't beat yourself up about it, but just catch yourself when it happens and just keep reminding yourself to come back to this focus on the breath, breathing in for 1, 2, 3, 4, belly expands, and breathing out for 1, 2, 3, 4. You might like to increase the counts even more if you feel like you can comfortably. Or you might find that where you're at now is starting to feel a little bit strained, so you just need to pull back and reduce the counts. Adapting it to your unique body. Just check that you still have that sense that the belly is expanding with the inhale, contracting with the exhale. And let's stay here for 3 more rounds. And arriving at your last round here. And then we'll stop worrying about that expansion through the belly, but still try and keep the breath deep. Because as we move through the rest of our physical practice, the deeper breath is the key to our yoga practice. If we're breathing shallow, we're sending signals to our brain that we're still quite stressed. We're in that flight or fight zone. And when we're there, the body doesn't effectively let go of the tension. But as soon as we start to deepen our breath and we tell our mind and our body that we're okay and that we want to be here, that's when the tension starts to melt away and we start to open up. Clear away those physical blocks. So we'll start to wiggle the fingertips and toes, bring movement back into the body. And then we'll make our way onto our right side, use the left hand to prop ourselves up. And let's come to explore one of our foundational yoga poses. So this pose is called easy pose, or Sukhasana is the traditional name. And especially if we're beginning, we want to be sitting on a bolster or a pile of pillows. And that little bit of height underneath the hips just helps the hips to relax. It helps our nervous system to relax, so the hips actually start to let go of the tension. Quite often if we're sitting without that support, the knees are popping up and the body's sort of holding on, and we're telling our brain that the hips are quite stressed where we are because we're sort of holding on to that tension. So that height just helps the knees relax down to the floor. And then we try and line up the heels in front of each other and we roll the knees down to the floor. It doesn't matter if the knees are lifting a little bit, but that's what we're aiming for. Good. So once we're there, we'll just ground down through both of the sit bones and start to lengthen up through to the crown of the head. So beautiful straight spine. Just notice what your lower back's doing. If your tailbone is rolling under and there's a rounding through your lower back, you might need to sort of build up a little bit more height underneath the hips. So you could get a couch cushion and then pop your pillows on top, or build up a couple of couch cushions and just get enough height so that you feel quite comfortable through the hips and the lower back is slightly gently rounded. Good. So from there, we're drawing up to the crown of the head, the shoulders are peeling back and down. And let's just hold this position for a few breaths. 5 deep breaths here. So close your eyes. Keep finding this sense that you're grounding down through the sit bone, but there's an opposite pull from the crown of the head. So it's like your spine is lengthening away from the two poles and you're trying to create space between the vertebrae. At the same time, the shoulders peel back and down. There's a sense of a gentle opening through the chest. And we'll stay for 2 more breaths. Just noticing how this feels. And then opening your eyes, we'll just do a little bit of work to warm up our joints. And we'll start by dropping the chin down to the chest and roll the right ear to the right shoulder. And then dropping the chin to the chest and roll the left ear to the left shoulder. The little semicircles with the head, and we're going to start coordinating this with our breath. So as we inhale and the right ear reaches towards the right shoulder, that's the top of the inhale. As we exhale, we drop the head down through the center and we inhale left ear to left shoulder. Exhale, roll the head through the center. Inhale, right ear to right shoulder. Exhale, dropping the head through the center. And inhale, left ear to left shoulder. Let's do 3 more on each side. And we'll do the next couple of rounds in silence so you can really focus on coordinating your smooth, deep breathing with this movement. And your mind is completely focused on what you're doing, so there's a sense that your body, mind and breath are starting to coordinate as one interconnected unit. Okay, next time the chin drops to the chest, keep the shoulders rolling back and down, and we'll take both of our hands on top of our head. As we continue to draw up through the spine, we're just going to put a little bit of weight on our head till we feel a bit of a stretch down the back of our neck, maybe through our upper back. Take 2 more deep breaths here. Last deep inhale. Exhale, release the head. We'll drop the head over to the right. Use the right hand to press down. The left shoulder presses down towards the floor, so gentle stretch down the left side of the neck. Breathing in. As we exhale, just drop the nose down towards the floor, and we'll just lift our hand and then press down again so we feel the stretch move a little bit further back in the neck. Breathing in. As you exhale, release the head and we swap sides. So the left ear is dropping over to the left shoulder now. Use the left hand to press down on the head. The right shoulder presses down towards the floor. Deep inhale here. And exhale, drop the nose down to the floor and press down on the head again. So we're feeling into that stretch a little bit further back in the neck. Releasing the head, just do a little bit of shoulder rolling. So fingertips come to the shoulders. As we inhale, the elbows come forward. See if you can touch them together, but if not, just squeeze them together as much as you can. And as you exhale, we squeeze the scapular bones back and down the spine. A real emphasis on that push back, so we're opening up through the chest and we're exploring our full range of motion in our shoulder joints. And again, we're coordinating this with our breath. As we inhale, the elbows come forward and up. And as we exhale, we squeeze the scapular bones back and down the spine. And then if you like, you can close your eyes and see if you can coordinate the movement with the breath. The breath is smooth and deep. And so the movement should be smooth and slow to match that pace. Let's do 2 more rounds. And releasing the arms down by the sides and opening your eyes if they're closed. So these kind of joint rolling practices that we do in yoga, they're very typical to a lot of traditional hatha yoga lineages, and the purpose of them, often they're known as anti-rheumatic groups of exercises, and the point is to get the synovial fluid moving through the joints. So we're sort of lubricating the joints, moving more nutrients through the joints, and they're really amazing preparation for other postures. So even though they're quite simple, they're quite amazing and effective. So when you do a practice where you sort of roll through and explore the full range of motion in all of the joints, you usually feel pretty amazing, but it's really great preparation as well, and really great meditation practice as well. If you can focus in on coordinating the breath with those movements, you can go quite deep and start to practice your meditation as well. So let's start to warm up our spine a little bit. We'll do a seated cat-cow. We'll start by drawing the elbows into the sides and the belly button draws forward. We arch through the back, peel the shoulders back, lift through the chest. And exhale, slide the hands out to the knees, draw the belly button back and arch through the spine. Inhale, hands slide back, and it's like we're pushing the torso through the arms. And exhale, rounding through the back as the hands slide forward to the knees. So you can stick with this version where the hands are sliding back and forth up the legs. Or there's another version you can try where you can just try and hold on to the knees and just take a tight grip there. And then as you inhale, we pull the shoulders back, move the chest forward through the arms, and then keep that grip as you round through the back. Draw the shoulders forward, chin to chest. Inhale, arching through the back. And exhale, rounding through the back. So let's do 5 more rounds. Again, just checking that your breath is still smooth and deep, and then we're trying to match the pace of the movement to the breath, and our mind is focused on that connection. The body, mind and breath moving together. have a little play around with exploring both versions, maybe switch between the two if that feels good for you. I'll just stick with your preferred one. Okay, come up to straight spine. We'll move into a little bit of twisting. So our left hand reaches on to catch our right leg. The right hand comes to the back of our pillows or our bolster, so we've got a tight grip there. You can bring the hand a little bit closer to the hip here if that feels more comfortable for you. But we're just using that grip to start to lengthen through our spine. Take a full inhale here, and then exhale, pull yourself around into a twist, looking as far around to the back of the room as you can. And we'll just hold for 2 more breaths. One more deep inhale. Exhale, we unravel. We'll swap the legs over, so bring the front foot behind. And then we go other side, moving into a twist, grabbing onto the leg, grabbing onto the back of your pillows or bolster, and then use that grip to lengthen through the spine as you inhale. And exhale, pull yourself around into a twist. Breathing in and exhale, just very, very, very slowly unravel. Good. So today I thought I would have a little bit of a focus on forward bending because a lot of the concepts apply to a lot of the forward bends, and I just want to get comfortable with that today. Forward bends are often used for introspection, and they just sort of help us to get into a more of a introverted state. So naturally, as we fold forward, our attention wants to go inwards a little bit more, and it's really, really good for just helping you to observe what's going on internally. So we'll give a seated forward bend a go to start. So we'll bring our legs out in front of us. You can stay sitting on your pillows or your bolster, or if you feel more comfortable, you can come and sit on the floor and just slide off a little bit. We'll start by bending our knees quite a bit. And then we'll start to hinge from our hips and feel as though you're laying your belly across your thighs. We'll catch onto the outside or the tops of our feet and just gently start to pull the base of our spine forward. From here, you can start to slide your heels forward. Move very, very, very slowly. And if you've got quite tight hamstrings, you will start to notice very quickly a point where the lower back starts to curve out. There's a lot of tension that starts to move into the lower back to allow for this straightening through the legs. The moment you notice the lower back curving, you know you need to pull the heels back a little bit, because it's more important that we get that nice deep hinging from the hips and the base of the spine is pushing forward, and we're not rounding through our back, than it is to straighten the legs. So I'll just show you what I mean this way. I'm hinging from the hips, laying my belly across the thighs, catching onto my legs and my feet. And then I start to slide my heels forward. Now, for those of us with very tight hamstrings, what will start to happen is a rounding into the back, and there's a lot of tension starting to move into the back to allow for this straightening. So we don't want that to happen, so just move your heels back so you can get this sense that the base of the spine is pushing forward and the spine is staying relatively straight. So over time, you'll get to a point where you can lengthen through the legs and you can still press the base of the spine forward. But the moment this starts to happen and you feel tension move into your back, you know you need to bend. Beautiful. So once you've found the right position for you, we'll just hold for 6 deep breaths. Another nice option is just to pop your bolster or your pillows underneath your knees. Whichever version you're choosing to try, just really be aware of that rounding and tension moving to the back. The moment that happens, you know you need to bend the knees a little bit. You keep the belly nuzzled into the thighs. And there might be a little bit of rounding through the back, that's okay. But as long as you're not feeling that tension moving in, that tension that happens when the straightening of the knees pushes your back to curve, if that makes sense. Let's hold for 2 more breaths. One more breath. And then slowly coming up, get rid of the props. And we'll make our way onto our front to explore one of the most common postures that we come back to over and over again in the practice of yoga. You've probably seen lots of pictures of it before, and we call it downward dog. So this is a part of the forward bending category as well. And we'll just run over the technique for that. So I want you to start so that your knees, your hips and your heels are in a parallel line on your mat. And then we reach the arms out in front of us, and also make sure that the arms are in a parallel line as well. The fingers are spread wide with the middle finger facing forward. And from here, I'm going to tuck my toes under. And I start to lift my tailbone up to the ceiling. So same as our seated forward bend, I want to start with my knees quite bent so I can get this sense that the hips are lifting up. And then I start to press my chest through my arms and start to wrap the underarms around through to the heart. And then from there, you can start to lift the tailbone and lengthen through the knees a little bit. But the moment you feel that curve and tension starting to move into the back, you know you need to bend the knees again. And rolling the knees down to the floor. Have a moment's rest in child's pose. Okay, so you can see how it's pretty much the same concept as you come into that downward dog triangle shape. Again, if you've got tighter hamstrings, you need to keep the knees bent so that you can keep this flat line through the upper body. If you try and lengthen the knees completely when you've got tight hamstrings, that will mean that the back will start to curve and a lot of unwanted tension will move into the back, and we don't want that. So it's more important to keep a bend in the knee and maintain the straight line from wrist to tailbone than it is to get the knee straight. That will happen naturally over time, so don't worry about that just yet if it's not happening. So let's have another little go. Knees, hips and heels in a parallel line. And then we bring the arms into a parallel line, so the shoulders, the elbows, the wrists, like train tracks along the mat. And we spread the fingers wide, middle finger faces forward. Sort of find this sense that our hands are like gecko hands and we're pressing down through all of those 5 points. And then once we're there, we tuck the toes under, keep the knees bent and lead with the tailbone. So the tailbone leads our hips straight up to the ceiling. And to start, we keep the knees bent, we get that lift underneath the hips and start to press the chest through the arms to find that flat line. We want to make sure that we're not curving too much the other way through the back either. So to correct that, find this sense that your underarms are wrapping around towards your heart. There's a sense of broadening through your shoulder blades. And then from there, you can lengthen through the knees just a little bit. The moment you feel that curve starting to move into the lower back, you know you need to bend the knees again. Hold for one more breath. And then roll the knees down to the floor. Have a moment's rest. Good job. Okay, let's do that one more time, just to let that sink in. So coming to sit back, knees, hips, and heels in a parallel line. And we come forward, reaching the arms out. And the arms are in a parallel line with the fingers spread wide, middle finger facing forward. Tuck the toes under. And then lead with the tailbone. Imagine there's a strap or something underneath your hips and that strap is pulling the hips up towards the ceiling. Keep the knees bent. Start to press the chest through the arms, wrap the underarms around to the heart, shoulder blades broaden. And the scapular bones move down away from the ears, so it's like you're also making a bit more space between the shoulders and the ears. Explore straightening through the knees a bit, but the moment that curve moves into the lower back, you know you need to bend again. One more full breath. Drop the knees down to the floor. Sink the hips back towards the heels. And let's have a moment's rest in child's pose. So child's pose is a posture that we can move to at any point through the practice where we feel like we need a little break. And I really, really recommend that you do this whenever you feel you need to, because quite often our tendency is to push ourselves and push ourselves. It's a mentality that's just drilled into us often from an early age, and it doesn't really serve us at all. So yeah, anytime you're starting to feel like you need a moment's rest, anything you're starting to feel a little bit too tired or something's not feeling quite right anymore, just drop down into child's pose. And there's two ways you can do it. You just sink your hips back to your heels and you can drop the forehead down towards the floor and keep the hands here. Or if your forehead comfortably rests on the floor, you can bring your arms by your side and come into this version. If you like, if you've got a block or you can use a pile of books, you can pop that underneath your forehead if you're not quite comfortable with the head all the way to the floor. We'll stay here for 2 more breaths. One more breath. Hands come next to the chest. And let's make our way to stand. So again, we're going to explore another forward bend, but a standing version this time, and the same concepts that we've been talking about apply to this as well. So bring the feet into parallel, so ankles, knees and hips are in a parallel line. And then I'm going to focus on this really nice hinging at the hips. I start to soften my knees and see if you can hit this point where the back is straight and at a flat back. You bring the hands to the thighs to support. You feel into that hinging. Start to soften the knees and then start to nuzzle the belly into the thighs, just as we did when we were sitting. And relax the backs of the hands to the floor, or keep the hands on the shins. Start to find this sense that the back is relaxed, the neck is relaxed, just lengthening out to the floor. And then from there you can start to lift the tailbone if that feels okay. But again, the moment your back starts to pop out like that and you're feeling tension moving to your lower back, you know you need to bend the knees and find that softness through the spine again. Let's slide the hands up the legs. Just standing again, and we'll try that 2 more times. So we'll bring our fingers to our hips so we can feel into that hinging. Our feet, our knees, our hips are in a parallel line. And then we start to hinge. So we're sending our tailbone back The tops of our hip bones are melting forwards. We're keeping the back straight. Bring the hands to the thighs for support. Pause there a moment and feel into that hinge. Make sure your back is not starting to curve like this. And then we'll start to soften through the knees. Start to nuzzle the belly into the thighs. Bend the knees as much as you need to. So even if you are bending quite a lot like this, that's completely fine. And as you come forward, find this sense that the spine is released and relaxed. The neck is relaxed. The backs of the hands can come to the floor or they can stay on the shins for support. And from there, you can start to lift the tailbone and lengthen through the backs of the legs. But again, remember the moment that you lose that hinging, you lose that connection between the belly and the thighs and the back pops out like that, you know that you need to bend the knees, find that hinge again, and find that sense of a release through the spine. One more breath. Slide the hands back up the legs, take it slow. And we come to standing. Good. So one more foundational posture that I'll teach you today. And it's often known as Tadasana or mountain pose. And we'll bring our feet into parallel. Our knees, our hips, our ankles are back in that straight line. And we bring our palms to face forward. And let's start with our hips. So if we move the hips forward, tuck the tailbone under, move the hips back, move the tailbone back, and we find a nice, comfortable, neutral position for our hips. The next thing we do, we start to lengthen through the spine to the crown of the head. And the shoulders move back and down, palms facing forward. And imagine that your chin is at a horizontal line and you're pushing your chin back so the back of your neck moves into alignment with the rest of the spine. And once you've got that, we start to press the fingertips down into the floor, feel length down the arms and hold. It's a very, very simple foundational pose, but you can make it as strong and as active as you like. So feel as though you're grounding down through the feet. And then from there, just gently activating through the legs. Feel as though you're gently drawing the kneecaps up. Activating gently through the thighs, squeezing in through the glutes. We have that nice neutral position through the hips where there's just a nice natural curve in our lower back. And then from there, we're drawing up to the crown of the head. So there's a bit of an opposite pull happening between the two poles of our body, anchoring down through the feet and the hips, but a lift through the crown of the head. So once we've got that happening in our central axis, the shoulders peel back and we squeeze the scapular bones down. Got that horizontal line underneath our chin and the chin is moving back, so the back of our neck comes into alignment with the rest of our spine. And then our fingertips draw down and we feel that length and grounding all the way down our arms. So you can choose to close your eyes if you like. And hold for 4 more breaths. Breathing in. Exhale, relax the arms by the side. We'll just do a roll down to the floor. So I quite often use rolls as connecting moments in our Vinyasa and Hatha Flow classes. So again, our feet are in parallel. The chin drops down to the chest and we start to roll the shoulders forward. Make sure you start to soften the knees as you come down, because if you come down with the straight knees, as we talked about before, and you start to round through your back, you'll feel a lot of tension, unwanted tension move into your spine. So that softening through the knees takes that tension away. And you can slide the hands down the legs for a little bit of support, but feel as though the crown of the head is leading your spine down, and vertebrae by vertebrae, You're lowering yourself down to the floor. Bend your knees as much as you need to get into that nice hinging position. And then you can soften the knees and lower yourself back to your mat. Good. So once you're back on your mat, we'll bend the knees, arms come out to the side, and we'll just finish off with some simple twisting motions. Knees drop over to the left, head looks to the right. And then coming back to the center, knees drop to the right, head looks to the left. And back to the center, one more time on each side. And then once you come back to the center again, bring the legs long, bring the arms by the sides. And we come to our final resting position, Shavasana. Once you're there, give the whole body a deep squeeze, clench in your fists, point your toes, squeeze in your core, glutes and face. And then just let everything go. So that little moment of tension helps us to get a deeper relaxation afterwards. And we'll spend the last couple of moments scanning through the body, just noticing what feels new or different. Notice if any of your joints feel a little bit more freedom. Notice any other sensations that maybe you did not notice before. Notice how you're feeling energetically. Make sure that your breath is settled down into a nice, natural, everyday breath, and notice if there's any changes to the breath from when you first observed it at the start of the practice. Now keep trying to train your mind to become more focused and aware. So we'll just choose one little detail now, whether that's just one sensation in one joint, maybe the pulse in one finger, whatever it is for you, just focus on one little detail and we'll just see if we can keep our attention there for a few moments without the mind wandering. And then we'll shift our internal focus outwards. Still see if you can keep staying present and anchored in this moment, but just start to take in outside sounds, feel the temperature on your skin, to see what you can notice outside of yourself in this moment. And when you feel ready to move, start to wiggle the fingertips and toes. You can roll onto your right side and use your left hand to prop yourself up. Beautiful. So in terms of the breath and retraining ourselves to breathe deeply, I hope that you understand how incredibly important it is to retrain ourselves to breathe more deeply again. Most of the energy that we use in our body comes from the oxygen that we bring into our body with the breath. So yeah, it's so incredibly important that we retrain our breath so that we're breathing properly again. And yeah, so that was basically some of the foundational yoga basics. So I hope you enjoyed that. Next time we'll go over some different categories of postures. And if you have any questions about today's class, please let me know. Send me a message. I'd love to hear how you went. But otherwise, I hope you have a beautiful rest of the day, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.